Greetings from my barn, so forgive me for the distractions behind me. I'll be in my office soon, just getting some work done on that, but that's not why you're tuning in anyway. So let me get in to, this is going to be an advanced OAuth2 QuickBooks API screencast. On the last screencast, it was really basic, bare bones example. Now this one I'm going to show I have an example app that I use for my book, and I'll go over some of the parts of that in this screencast. And that's a real app where I need to persist the tokens. I'm going to need to renew the tokens, and I think that's going to be like one of the most valuable parts of this screencast. Now I'm not going to have a lot of code posted in this article. That is going to be to encourage you to go buy my book. There's so much great information in there, and it helps support this educational resource site too. So I'll be purposely not putting some code there in print, but you certainly can, stop the screencast and copy it from here, or again, go buy the book. If you don't like the book, you can always return it. It's from LeanPub. But again, the renewal, and I'm going to have an auto renewal system that I explained in the screencast that is much better than actually the OAuth1. Well, actually, I didn't even show an example for that. In the book, I have an example for renewing OAuth1 tokens. But, as you probably noticed, you're beginning to implement the OAuth2. The access token only lasts for 1 hour, and that is going to be a problem. So you need to come up almost right away in development for an auto-renew program. So enough with this introduction. Let me jump in and start showing you some of this more advanced OAuth2 setup. All right, let's start right here where I started this screencast on this particular code. Now I have a just a QBO base class. This is where I do some initializing, and I haven't even changed this yet, this part of the code. I just did the connect code and the auto renew code. This will have to be changed as well. But anyway, this is the base class, and I decided to put the rack OAuth2 client initializer here because I'm going to have to call it from multiple spots, from the view, from controllers, and I just stuck it in this place. However, there is a bit of difficulty when doing that. Now you know that URL helpers do not work all over the place. So I made a router class as well to help. Where did I put that? Oh, here it is. This just helps to jam URL helpers wherever you want them. So I can do that. And another thing too is you have to use localhost for your development when you do a development test. Like I use PAL, I'm on OS X, and you cannot use anything but the localhost if you just want to use HTTP protocol and not HTTPS. Now, if you use HTTPS locally, you set that up, I believe that will be taken fine on the app card. So on the app card, like in my first example, you need to set up the redirect URI. But again, if you're not going to set up HTTPS locally, you got to use localhost. So also when I do these examples, when you do these examples in Rails or another platform, if you're using something like POW, which makes it basically, you could I usually have border smash.dev here. But when I'm doing this connect testing, gotta use localhost. And it's just so important. There's like so many errors I ran into. There's other people running into on the forums. Intuit just posted a blog post about the redirect URL because it's creating so many errors. So you have to use localhost. But yeah, so then everything needs to be set too. Like even the redirect URI needs to be set even when you're not like using it. That's another thing I noticed. It might just be the RAC OAuth2 client gem, or the RAC OAuth2 gem rather, that requires that. But you always need to have this set, because in some cases I was like going to do the initialize the client and not set the redirect URI, but it needed to be set in the different places that you're using it. So here is my process. Now I just connected. I'm not going to connect, but I usually have a connect button right here. If there is no token, you can disconnect this now. I'm not going to do that right now. But I usually have a connect button here where it starts the process. Now, let me go to that view. And it's down here. So here's the code for this. And it's really the same code. You can use different buttons nowadays in Intuit world. I'm still just using this one that sets up their button. And this URL is from the accounts controller. So let me go there. Okay, so we're up here. So this accounts controller, I just come into the accounts, the QBO account view. It is going to set the OAuth state, which if I go down, OAuth2 state rather, that's down here. And that is simply creating a random UUID in your session, because what you're going to do is you're going to do a CSRF protection to make sure that your response you're getting came from this site, from your site. So you're going to generate something unique, stick it in your sessions, and then check on it when you do a response. And for testing, I just use it static because of, you can imagine why. You don't want a random ID if you want to mock something out. Which I actually did a full VCR request using Copybar VCR and did a whole run through on the OAuth2 flow. But anyway, but here is where the redirect URI comes in. So here's where I'm calling the OAuth2 client in a class method, grabbing the authorization URI. These two need to be stuck here, the scope and the state. You can't at least do it in the RAC OAuth2 gem. You would think you could just put the scope there, but no, it needs to be done as a parameter here. And makes sense that the state needs to be put in here dynamically and not statically in the OAuth2 client. But anyway, so we set that. There's the session. And we're going to come back to this code down here, and we're simply just sticking in that redirect URI, which is being generated here. So I made a route in my, I have these huge accounts routes here, but had to make a collection route. So this does not have a param ID. Most of my stuff, this is a multi-tenant sample app, and it always has an ID in the URL that helps authentication, all that stuff, right? You can't do that in your QuickBooks redirect URI. It needs to be a static URI. So that's why I went with a collection URI, which does not have, it's not going to have the account ID in the parameter. It's just going to have accounts OAuth2 callback, no one. So accounts OAuth2 callback, okay? So that's very important too, and I had to do some special stuff in the code because I'm expecting the parameter ID in the URI. All right, let's go back here now. So that's it. It's going to pump in on the button here, it's going to pump in that proper redirect URI, and I'm really ready to roll. And then I'll go through the OAuth process. I'm not going to do it here because I have it in the other video anyway, and this is already going to be long, and I want to make sure I'm just getting to the meaty parts. So let's go look at the request, which is going to be very similar to the other video. Now I'm putting everything in the OAuth2 actions concerns, but I really shouldn't even do that because there's only one now method. And here's what I have for the OAuth2 callback. So when it comes back in, I just need to do some of that stuff there I was talking about. I need to actually not. So I need to not run the authenticate account on OAuth2 callback because I don't have it in the params. I don't have it again in the URL. I do not have the account ID in the URL. So I have to sort of rig it in right here. I have a session already set for current ID, so I put it as a params. This is just so authenticated account is expecting a params ID. But anyway, it's worth noting, like most apps are multi-tenant apps, so you might run into something like this, but I won't spend too long on it. Here I'm doing the CSRF check, so I know what that session was. It should come back the same way. That's into it in a state parameter is coming back to you like that. And I need to initialize the client again. Okay. And again, this is very similar to the example app. So this is in Rack OAuth2. You're calling the authorization code from the code you get back, and then you're getting the access token. Now here I'm saving the access token and refresh token and the company ID in the database. So I have a QBO accounts table that you need to save these two. Also, I encrypt these in the database. It's required if you have an Intuit app. For example, oops, what am I doing? It's already running, all right? And by the way, this is, it's a Rails 5 app. And so these are the columns that I have right now set up. In my book, I have it more streamlined, but this is using the adder encrypted gem. So that's why it has some encrypted prefixes there and the IV prefixes. And you really need just a token now. You want to persist the company ID as well, and you want to persist the refresh token. You got to save those, and they should be encrypted in your database. And again, it's required if you have an Intuit, a QuickBooks app. But enough. It's already 14 minutes. Let's get to the renew code. This is probably again the most valuable stuff here. Okay, I'm not going to go over that. This is just what you do when it returns back. I have a little view that comes in, and you're getting back your information and we refresh the page, and I have this in this shared close and redirect partial. I'll quickly show it because it's interesting. So it's just like this little page. So when you're getting back the information after you hit authorize, this is something you can add in. It's like a little please wait, we're receiving back information from QuickBooks Online. I have a little picture. Again, this is all in the book. And then this little JavaScript that's basically just going to redirect you back to your main page after you popped up in 5 seconds. And it's great getting the URL where to go back to from your app. But let's get into this auto renew code I've been talking about. So once you get the refresh token, you can use this refresh token. Let me go to renew the access token. So the access token is good for 1 hour. You can renew it at any time within that 1 hour. Now, I should mention, okay, when I'm saving these set OAuth2 creds, let me go to my model there. I'm also adding these, oops, that's set OAuth1. Anyway, I'm putting in those attributes, access token, client ID, blah, 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 refresh token here, but I'm also adding these expiry attributes, and that's in the QBO count. And what I'm saying is the token expires in 1 hour from now once you save the token. The reconnect token is going to try to reconnect at 50 minutes from now. So you'll see why that is the way it is. So anyway, here is my renew rake task. So what I do is I go through all the accounts. I have a scope that determines what accounts are now expired and ready to be renewed. This is probably not the best language. If that's the language from OAuth2, I didn't change it. And that's up here. Basically what it does is it's where the reconnect token is less than now and the token expires is not greater than or equal to now. And what it does is in that little 10-minute window between the 10 minutes from now and the 1 hour from now, that's when we'll do a retoken renewal. And we'll do that just so that we're not doing this all the time. You know, one of the solutions you can go with is like every time you do a request is to go get and refresh the access token. The access token will not change if you refresh it, by the way. Okay, so you don't get a brand new access token. It's the same access token. It's just validated for another hour and another hour and another hour using the refresh token. Okay, so and the reason I do 50 minutes from now, you don't have to do it. You can do 45 minutes, a 15-minute window, or whatever. But it's just so you're not doing this all the time. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, I just thought about putting this in the QBO API, like on a request to always like refresh the token, but I don't want to do that. And I want to do it this way. We'll see though. With only an hour window, we'll see. And you really do need to make a really good renew task, like in cron or your startup. Like when you start up your machine, you need to start up this background job, which I'll go over right now that I've been talking about. But anyway, so it's here's the task. So here's the accounts that are now ready to be renewed. And again, you just get the OAuth2 client. There's a refresh flow in Rack OAuth2 client, and it should be in any library. And here's where you give it the refresh token, and then you can get the access token from that. And then I refresh it in the database. Not that the access token is going to change, but it gets put in there again. The refresh token will change. Okay, and then there's just a bunch of logging that I do in background jobs, and you probably do too. So now what runs this? What I decided to do was give this gem, the Chrono gem, a chance. Now you could use, I'm on OS X, I could use cron. Cron's here. I could be using launch D, which I am going to use launch D too, and I'm going to use Chrono. Now, if you're on Linux, I just suggest you use cron. And if you're on Windows, you can use Chrono plus whatever startup on boot thing you need. And I'm sure there's many of them. But I decided to do, you can check out the Chrono gem. These two are needed if you want to run it as a daemon. And it comes with this Chrono tab. Okay, so I'm going to be running this renew token task every 3 minutes. I'm going to truncate the log there. And I would suggest using a job and not a rake task. I actually got kind of messed up here because you have to re-enable a rake task. In the book, I have why that's the case. And but whatever, at least you know now if you're doing Rails that you need to do it like this. But I would maybe just use a job, a renew job, maybe not a task, because it is really a background job. So, and you have to start up. I have an BE for bundle exec, but you have to bundle exec chrono start. Now, I have it running right now, so I'm not going to do it. But there's a problem there. So, okay, so this is going to run. This is going to renew my token. That's great. But what about when a machine reboots, or what's there to check? You need like Monit to check chrono. So why not just use cron? And I don't know. I just wanted to try out this gem. I think it's pretty cool that I can run some background things locally without and having the nice syntax in some of my apps. And I may even use it in production in the future, even though I do use the whenever gem with cron in production, and I will right now. I decided to try this out. I don't know how much I would use it in the future, but I did also have to do launch D because I need to make sure that this runs when I start up my machine. This, at least chrono runs. And I would ideally like something to check on chrono to see if chrono is running. Okay. And you're going to want that too, because as soon as you reboot your machine, not that I do it that often, it's going to expire, then you're going to have to do new tokens again, and that's going to be a real pain in the neck. And so what I did was I came up with a launch D task. And again, this is all in the book, but here's the task here. And it's going to run this every 15 minutes. And it checks, when you run bundle exec chrono start, it'll check. It won't run a new instance of chrono, but it will just check that it's running at least. And not only that, this runs at load. So when my machine starts, this is going to start and keep my tokens refreshed. It's also then going to check every 15 minutes it's still running. You need to take a look at and run it like I had to run it with bin. I use CH Ruby and Ruby install for my Ruby environment, or Ruby installations, Ruby management, I should say. And I needed to use bin bash with arguments LC to start these, and this works fine. And you load it up, and it works, and it's great. So now I got this hardcore solution, or tight solution that's keeping my tokens renewed locally. So I'm going to end it here. Hope you enjoyed the screencast and got a lot out of it. And again, point you to buying the book and supporting this educational resource site. Thanks for watching.